Live. So it should just take a second. We're potentially already live. So I am going to make sure I press record. I've done that a couple of times. Have you ever done something and you've forgotten to press the record? Oh my God.
Quite often. But luckily, you've normally been there and you've had my back.
That's right. I did actually. I taped it one time just in case. I could see that it wasn't being recorded. But anyway, I do believe that we are live. Let me double check on my little phone. Yes, no. I can't see us yet. So if we are live, I apologize in advance. But I just want to make sure. Yes, we are live, my darling. So welcome to the amazing Jaime Henderson. How are you today?
Thank you very much for having me on. I am doing very well for a rather drizzly Monday here, I must say.
Yes. Thank God for drizzle, because the pipes broke on my retic last night. So yay.
One less thing for you to fix this week with your button.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun. So, as I say, it's a pleasure to have you here. I know that we know each other a little bit offline as well as online. And I was really excited to bring you on because even though I've known you for about 2 years, it's only recently that I've actually heard some of your story. And, you know, you have so much to share with other people, as in the journey you've been through can help and inspire them so much. So it's really exciting to have you here. So I have a few questions listed, but I always go off track anyway. So it's just a conversation and just to allow people to get to know a bit more of Jaime and a little bit more of what you stand for. So first and foremost, I know we've only limited time per se, but can you tell us kind of who you were and the transition you had to go through to be who you are today?
Yeah, so I actually have a pretty definitive line in my life. And it's 2013 when my now late husband was diagnosed with cancer. And it's like this line was drawn in the sand for me. And it's kind of like pre and post. So before the cancer, I had high anxiety. I was on a path where I thought I should be doing things. And in fact, I was in a job because friends that I knew were in similar line of work. And I'm like, oh, well, it works for them. Maybe it should work for me. But I was never particularly comfortable with what I was doing. I didn't have that fire and that passion in the belly, especially like they did. And then husband got cancer and everything basically stopped for 2 years. It was just about him and dealing with the cancer, the illness, the what if he dies, what do we do next? And unfortunately, ultimately, he did die. He did have terminal cancer. And so then there was like a new line in the sand because for 2 years, I'd kind of hit pause on things. And once he died, I couldn't pause anymore. I actually had to deal with the fact that my life was shit. Everything that I knew before was gone. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I was doing. I actually didn't even know who I was anymore because he had been my partner pretty much for most of my adult life. So there was a big period of cluelessness. And there was a lot of pain in that. It was not just the grief, which was bad enough. It was all that stuff around that questioning and trying to understand who I was, and even really basic things like, what do I actually like? Really basic things.
Yeah.
And what I don't like. Some things are great. I no longer have to pretend that I like sport, which is fantastic.
It's the little things. Awesome.
That's been a great thing to discover. But there was obviously lots of other things. I knew at that time the job that I was doing, I couldn't keep doing anymore. That I did need to get out of health. That was one of my very basic fundamentals. I will admit, I will put my hand up, I am still currently working in health, but I now know where I'm going.
Right.
And it was a random conversation with a random person that led me to look into life coaching. Right. And I started reading about life coaching and I'm like, oh, I really like the sound of this. This sounds a lot more like me. And I I'm this kind of person that tends to think a lot before I make any decisions. There is usually a lot of processing that goes on. There wasn't so much with this one. I'm like, oh, life coaching, that sounds like a great idea. Let's find out what courses are out there.
Right. Wow. So
and
it was
in
a quick
2017,
decision.
that was my birthday present to myself.
Lovely. Awesome. Cool. Yeah.
So since then, it has been around. Turns out, when you're in coaching, you are your own best client. Everything that I now do with other people, it's because I've done that and I understand. And I'm still working on things, obviously, but it is very much, that has changed so much for myself. That was probably the best decision I ever made, because the changes for me have been enormous. I have a better understanding of who I am. I have a lot more faith in myself, because that was definitely, when I look back now, I was missing that. I didn't trust myself. I've become my own cheerleader rather than waiting for other people, which is obviously part of that. And when I look at like 5 years ago, I would never have put myself in the place where I would be setting up a business ever. I would have don't know enough, couldn't possibly. And now I am. And that is pretty remarkable.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. Look, I love your energy. And look, I'm so sorry for some of the things that have happened. However, we find out sometimes at the other side of that journey of whatever it is, that they happened for some reason, or something that I was meant to learn, or whatever that is. Although how hard they were at the time. I don't know, the old saying, there's always a silver lining, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if you look for something, there's a learning out of it, and you can grow.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And cool. I know at that time I could have gone one of two paths. One of them would have been down that path of, I guess, like deteriorating, ultimately probably would have committed suicide. I have a lot more strength in me. Turns out my sense of self-preservation is awfully strong. So,
right. Yeah.
And so then that's the other path. The other path is to take that and to change things and to grow and hopefully, fingers crossed, become a better version, a better person, which luckily is the way I went.
Yeah, and look, as I said, I've known you for a couple of years now, and even the growth I've seen in that couple of years, I'm not too sure you would have even been on this interview when I first met you.
Trust me, there's still been oh my God, what the hell did I agree to? But I'm still here.
You are, but you're showing up, and it's, again, the old sayings, there's so much truth in some of the sayings of, feel the fear and do it anyway. It's like, well, just get those butterflies going in formation. I love that what you said, that you didn't know who you were or what you liked. And I think that's so prevalent, especially for women, not only for women. So in case anyone starts telling me, but in my experience, especially for women, it's kind of, we become the caregivers, we get married, we kind of have kids or become a caregiver in some other way, shape or form. And then it's like that falls away and we go, oh, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? Who was I anyway? And it's quite and that's why I think your story is so powerful, because it resonates. I know when I heard you tell your story on a deeper level, it resonated with me, although I haven't been through exactly what you've been through. There was bits of it that were. And I think we communicate through story so much, that you sharing your story and from that vulnerable space, I'm so glad you didn't stay quiet. You need to shout it and help other people go through what you've gone through. So tell me, you mentioned coaching, and we've all had different experience of coaching, but there's a lot of different meanings put to the word life coach, for example. So what is coaching to you?
To me, it's about having that person there who can champion you, who has skills and techniques and a different way of looking at things to help you improve something. So just the same as sports person has a coach, who looks at their technique, looks at how they're doing things, looks at improving their results. It's kind of the same thing. It's just in a different part of your life. So for me, it was definitely around, obviously, the mental game.
Yeah.
And shifting a lot of that stuff, which doesn't matter what kind of coach you have, that is usually where everybody starts. Because if the mental game's not there, then the results won't be either.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, yeah, you're so right, because everything only has the meaning that we give it. And we hear that, but when you actually realize, like, it actually has, we can make stuff up. I think we had a conversation just recently about just make it up. It's like, yeah, actually I could.
Yep.
And you know, we can make, so, you know, a little kid says something and makes it mean that's bright and fluffy. That muck is a great little mud pie. As a parent, you go, oh my God, that's filthy, dirty, don't touch it. It's the same mud. It's just what they think of in that moment. So what is it that, obviously, yeah, I won't say what's the hardest thing you've ever done, because I think some of that is quite obvious. But what is the biggest factor that has helped you transition within yourself?
Having a support crew.
Right.
And probably, I think I have pretty much always been that person. I've had to do it myself. I still have that tendency. I still muddle away and try and do it all myself. But there was a point when I knew I couldn't do it myself anymore. And at that particular time, my support crew was my GP and I was seeing a psychologist. And then it helped me. My support crew gradually got wider because I could then start to talk to friends and other people about what's going on. And obviously now I am more open about what's been going on. Most of that stems from back then, from the fact that I could talk to some people who didn't judge me, who didn't think that I was a horrible person, because I actually wanted to kill my husband. And it was that lack of judgment that made me go, okay, I am not a complete screw up. I was going to say something else then, but I probably should limit my swearing a little bit.
You're talking to me. Let it
in. So that was definitely the biggest thing. And it was, again, when I started the coaching training, it is suggested is not the right word, but we'll go with it for now, that you get out there and you work with the other students. And so I started talking to a bunch of random strangers about some really personal things. And again, no judgment. So that started to shift how I related to other people.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And you're so right. And sometimes we'll tell strangers things that we won't have told people closest to us because we fear their judgment or assume. But now that you have experienced that, if you came across someone that did judge you, if you said something, how would you be able to deal with that differently now?
Goodness. I'm going to step back a little bit. One of the things that I did realize that my fear of other people judging me was because I was judging myself. And so I assumed that because I was judging myself and usually finding myself lacking, other people were as well.
Yeah.
So I've now come to realize that there will be people who judge me. There will be people who think that I'm doing a bad job or I'm a terrible person or whatever it happens to be. I cut somebody off in traffic and didn't say thank you. It can be anything. But as long as I know I'm doing the right thing and that I matter to me, it's become a lot easier to dismiss what other people say, because ultimately they don't know. They haven't been in my shoes. They don't know why I've reached this point or how I got to this point. So they can't possibly know what's really going on. They're just making a call based on what they see or think or have interpreted because of what they've just experienced.
Yeah, I love that. And it comes back to the trust that you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
It's when you get and I know you know about the 6 core needs and we talk about them, but one of them is certainty. And another flavor of certainty is trust.
Yeah.
And when you can have that trust from yourself and realize that other people's judgment of you is purely made up from their experience of the world. You know, have a look at what's going on in the world right now. Some people are way to the extreme, you have to do that. Some people are way to the extreme, you have to do this. Who's right or who's wrong? I don't know. I wouldn't even get into it. But each side believes they're right and believes it so vehemently, you must be wrong. So if somebody sees you behaving in a way quite often that they're afraid to, and that they've kept a lid on it, well, you must be wrong if you're opening it up because I couldn't possibly do that. When you come from that space, I find you get really calm when people kind of judge you because you kind of go, I know that's your shit. That's not mine.
Yeah,
oh, I just swore. I thought I was doing so well as well. But I love that. And I love the power of the journey of finding and discovering yourself and your strengths, because we're all so unique and different.
Definitely.
And you're right what you said earlier. Quite often we're our own best client. So what would have been so vital to you that could have helped you speed up, if you like, the journey you went through if it had it been available then?
Ooh, good question. I remember at the time I wanted someone to fix it. I wanted somebody else to come in and fix it and tell me what to do to make it all better. So really that would have helped.
Yeah. But if you had have felt supported by somebody, not necessarily fix it, and I'm not saying there wasn't people around you to support, because I know quite often people just don't know how to support through no fault or anything. They just don't know what to say, or, you know, it's like when somebody does pass away, people avoid you because they don't actually know how to say anything to you.
Yeah,
so, yeah. I don't mean that, but somebody that would come in and go, you know what, we're going to get through this. I'm going to step you through it and we'll do it together. Because while we say we wanted somebody to fix it, we knew it couldn't be fixed.
Yeah. And this sounds absolutely terrible. In some ways, I was kind of lucky because my stepfather died the same year my husband did. So I had my mum going through the same thing. So we could talk to each other about some of the stuff. And I'm like, is this normal? Is this not normal? And I think that was probably one of the biggest things I needed to know, was that what I was going through, whilst it was completely outside anything else I'd ever dealt with, actually it was normal.
Yeah.
I wasn't the only one doing this by myself.
No. And there is no playbook to go by. There just isn't. And, you know, similarly, we had a few deaths in our family quite close together. And I won't say that it was easy to talk to. Well, I had sisters and that, but it was almost like getting all the grief in one hit as well. And dealing with it, even though you didn't know where it was coming from and it was hitting you from all angles. But it was, I don't know, for me, it was quite intense, and yet it was quite healing, because there was no other alternative than to crack open.
Yeah.
You couldn't keep being strong anymore. You couldn't keep the face on it anymore.
No. And one of the big things, which I will admit now, but it took me years to, I felt really guilty.
Yeah.
And I felt guilty about all sorts of different aspects of it. But I knew logically that it wasn't right. So then I felt guilty about feeling guilty, which just goes to show that emotions and logic completely unrelated.
Yeah. I know.
I'll get your way out of emotion.
I hear you, because I know sometimes my partners say to me, you know better than that. It's like, oh my God, but it's just such an emotional thing, and the emotion comes up, even though I don't know about you, but I have the little voice in my head going, don't say that. And my mouth goes, I'm going to say it anyway. It's kind of, the emotion just pushes it out. So it's so true. But that awareness is friggin', it's just amazing to get that. So what has been, other than crew, what are some of the steps that you've taken? Like what made you finally, although I know things outside you happened and you did have a choice to go one way or another, well, what made you, or what happened within you to decide to go this way?
Sounds very vague, and oh gosh, I've just realized my camera is very much out of focus. Oh well. At the time, it felt right, which is very vague and very non-answer-ish. But there's just, I am generally quite a sensory person, both physically in terms of how something feels, but internally how it feels as well.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was living with a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. But when I started reading this for the first time, I was like, actually, this sounds right. This feels right. All that fear sort of settled down a bit, and I was excited and nervous rather than terrified. And I was like, oh, okay. And I have a slight benchmark, which is when it comes to something new that's kind of scary, I'm like, I wish my husband died. How bad could this be?
Wow.
Which really puts things into perspective, because it tells me that I have been through a really, really bad thing and I still came out pretty much intact. Yeah. So whatever it is that's coming up, it can't possibly be any worse.
Wow. Wow, that's much as, yeah, I know it kind of sounds a bit weird, but it's actually a great thing. It's like, well, I've already been through that stuff, so bring it. Let's just get past that stuff so I get through the stuff I really want to do.
Yeah.
So I know that you help people now. So who do you help most?
Oh gosh. Who I help most, especially now, is people who are going through, I guess, that period of questioning. So obviously not necessarily the trauma side of things, but it's that thing around of not knowing who I am or where I'm going. Because as you said, I've got that story behind me now. Yeah. So they see somebody like me who has gone through a big period, and quite a long one, and still come out the other side. So I think that it's that sense of, okay, if they can make it, I can too.
Yes.
Yeah, knowing that someone's gone ahead and is still there. So.
And that is the power of sharing your story. Some people say, oh, I don't want to share my story because I don't want to sound like a victim. It's like, when we talk about the different selves, and that's in voice dialogue, a whole other thing to talk about. But one of the selves is the victim. And we have this meaning, I think, that we put on victim as in, oh, that's somebody that's whinging and moaning and blah, blah, blah. But the victim has a job, just like every other self. There's a damaged self, there's a hero, everything. But the victim's job is to actually carry the story. That's its only job. It's when we live in our victim self that we become addicted to the drama and the blah, blah, blah. So it's very powerful to be in the space of, we've all done it, of the victim that can just tell the story in a way that empowers others. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. Because as I said earlier, I didn't even know your story, and I've known you for some time. Yeah. Because I think maybe there was a holding back of, even in that, fearing people judging you, that if you told your story, that you may in some way, shape or form.
Absolutely, there was. I put my hand up because I lived in the victim for quite a while.
Very natural.
At the stage where I literally wanted the word widow tattooed across my forehead, so then people would excuse why I wasn't doing what I thought I should be doing.
Right.
But now I guess it's because the emotion's a little bit more removed and I can see it from a different perspective. I'm like, okay, really, really shit, but gradually got better.
I love, your description is amazing. Really, really shit to gradually all better. I mean, what's better than that? I love it. And yeah, it's just, so now that you are, building a business, what are some of your success habits that you're having to build to do that?
At the moment, because I also work full time, my biggest thing is around being quite tightly scheduled and actually making myself do things. And I have found it is a lot easier if I go into a session knowing this is what I need to achieve out of this session ahead of time, rather than walking into a session and going, so what am I doing? So I am a bit of a checklist person. I need to write everything down, because I find if it's in my head, I either forget about it or I constantly think about it, so I don't forget about it. So if I write it down, it's just so much, it's there, it's done.
Yeah, cool. And that's a kind of a reverse engineering. Okay, what do I want the outcome to be?
Yeah.
When you go into any meeting, really, it can be used in any meeting or anything, because then you don't get attached to the he said, she said, emotional stuff. It's like, what do I want the outcome to be? And it's like, yeah. Yeah, it takes, I went to, forget what it was just recently, and somebody said, oh, this one said this and this one said that. And I said, what did you want the outcome to be? They said, oh, well, I wanted to stop doing that, whatever the behavior was. And I said, well, did you get that outcome? They said, yeah. I said, who cares what anyone said in the middle bit? As long as the outcome was achieved, that was kind of the main thing. So we're almost at the end of this interview, and I know we're hopping over to another group, which is so exciting. So if somebody wants to contact you and wants to, be able to communicate with you, be able to come to some of your meetups and everything that you're running now as well, what's the best way they can do that?
Probably the best way is actually, so on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Women Rediscovering Purpose. It is a great way to get involved and to at least see how I think, what I talk about, that sort of stuff. And we have we have a meetup group of the same name. So we actually have a meetup running this Sunday. Gosh, I'm like, wow, that rolled around real quick. See, this is why I need structure.
Yeah, on structure, mate. I'm the person that was never any structure, you know that, and I have to bow down to structure. So what time on Sunday is it? So that is, because if people are listening to this later, so that's Sunday the 6th, 7th?
Sunday the 19th of July. And it's 3 p.m. Perth time, so that'll be 5 p.m. for all the Eastern Staters. And I do have a special guest coming in this time who is talking about the strength that comes from your feminine energy. So we are going to be talking about the difference between masculine and feminine energy, and then she's going to come in specifically focusing on the feminine side of things. And
beautiful.
Comes in tapping into that.
Cool. Awesome. Terrific. Oh, we could talk about that for ages. So I'm going to finish this one for now, and we're going to hop over to another group and have a chat a bit more of the businessy side of stuff. So I would love to say thank you so much. It's really been amazing to see. You're like a flower opening up, because as I say, I know you, and to see you being so comfortable in this, and also so inspiring I can't wait to see what's next.
Me too.
All right, then. I'll see you on the other side.
I will indeed.
Bye for me.